Hello, and welcome to In This Together 2024. I'm Patricia Thrushhart, co founder of Poets Against Racism USA. We're delighted you've chosen to join us for this special poetry reading. This is our fourth annual event commemorating the death of George Floyd and confronting the persistence of systemic racism in our society. It fits perfectly with our mission to challenge racism, bigotry, and hate through the power of poetry. Now, during this reading, of course, you're going to hear tough, sensitive topics being confronted through poetry, and the emotions they evoke can be challenging, even overwhelming. We ask that you prepare for images that might upset you. And of course, we ask that you open your hearts to the messages that our poets bring to us tonight. At the end of the event, very importantly, we'll point you towards resources that can help us all take action to combat racism. Tonight, we'll hear from 5 wonderful poets, committed poets, passionate poets, all PAR USA members, and coming from Massachusetts, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and across the pond, the United Kingdom. Before we hear from them, though, PAR USA co-founder Debbie Allen has some thoughts she'd like to share. And as she comes on, I want to thank her for all the work she's done to make this event a reality. She's done all the hard work preparing for it, and she's providing the technical support behind the scenes for this live stream. So, Debbie, over to you.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for being such a wonderful partner in Poets Against Racism and Hate USA. I just want to say some remarks tonight about why we're here. And I'm going to begin by reading a poem. The poem I'm going to read is the current featured poem on the Poets Against Racism and Hate USA website. I'm reading it because it's so apropos to the message I want to convey. It's called I Saw Your Sign, and it's by PAR USA member Carol Smith. I saw your sign, granddaughter, as you marched in the throng that summer, amidst screams and cries and some silent tears. You moved in solidarity with people of color, mourning the loss, protesting the murder of George Floyd. Its bold red letters against an emerald green background caught my eye. I understand that I cannot understand, but I will stand with you. Compassionate humility. Now that the grieving time's passed and cameras are focused on other stories, I wonder about that sign. Have its corners become bent and tattered from use? Did the red paint fade to pink on other summer marches, or smudge and run during rainy day demonstrations? Does it stand sentinel in a dusty basement corner, hoping for its own obsolescence, but fearing it will be called into action next time? So Carol's poem takes us back to the time immediately following the death of George Floyd in May of 2020. Despite a deadly pandemic that required that we stay away from one another just to survive, we came together to protest for what's right and to raise one voice to exclaim that Black Lives Matter. For too long, deaths like George Floyd's had gone relatively unnoticed by a majority of people. George Floyd was just one name in a list of hundreds. And it seemed that when his death occurred, that things were finally going to be different. In a TV appearance this month, promoting his new book on systemic racism, political commentator Bakari Sellers described that time period this way. In that moment, I felt we were on the precipice of a third Reconstruction. Black folks, white folks, everybody from around the country, from around the world came out to express some level of empathy for this plight that we were going through. And maybe it was naivete, but I thought things were going to change. I think a lot of us felt like Bakari Sellers felt back then. People were in the street day after day. Protests were happening in large cities and small towns across the country. Government at various levels, federal, state, local, entities were exploring ways to enact police reform, to improve police accountability, to put an end to improper use of force. Corporations were vowing to address racism within their walls and lead the charge for societal change. It was really a heady time. And some encouraging legislation and policy modifications and other achievements did occur. But those outcomes were really more modest change versus real progress. And time went on, of course. And in America, probably like other places, we have a short attention span. As Carol's poem said, the grieving time passes and cameras focus on other stories. We move on from the most important of events and back into the routines of our daily lives. And that's what happened. By spring of 2021, it was clear that the fervent demand for change had diminished, while not enough real change had taken place. In the days at that time surrounding Derek Chauvin's guilty verdict, a police officer in Minnesota shot Daunte Wright, and another one in Ohio killed Ma'Khia Bryant. A Newsweek article at that time listed the names of the 229 Black people who had been killed by police in the 1 year since Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. Just 1 year. The killings continued. The protests did not. That's why Patricia and I, with support from Manjit Sahota of Poets Against Racism in the United Kingdom, initiated In This Together on the first anniversary of George Floyd's murder and subsequently launched Poets Against Racism and Hate USA. In his TV appearance earlier this month, Bakari Sellers went on to note that since that time of outrage and solidarity in 2020, we have actually, in his words, lost progress. That's the scary part, he said. Very scary. Bans on books by African American authors, increases in domestic racial terrorism, race-based attacks on voting rights by institutions from state legislatures to the US Supreme Court, the Black history taught to our children being rewritten, literally whitewashed, elimination of race-conscious scholarships at our universities, decreasing opportunity for African Americans to reap the benefits, the wealth-generating benefits of homeownership. The list goes on and on and on. Last week, I read an article about school names. There were 2 schools in Virginia that were named after Confederate leaders. And after George Floyd's murder in 2020, the names of those schools were changed. This month, the school board voted to restore those Confederate leader names to the schools. I know that alongside police brutality and voter suppression, the reinstatement of a disturbing school name seems like a small thing, but to me, it's a symbol, a momentous symbol of what's happening. Lost progress. Bakari Sellers is right. We're not progressing, we're regressing. And that regression, along with the aforementioned short attention span of the American people, is why we keep doing this event year after year on the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. Our purpose is to use poetry to refocus attention on systemic racism in the United States. Along with our Poets Against Racism UK counterparts, we believe that poetry is an effective means of protest. It's effective because poetry can reach people in ways that other forms of communication can't. There's an example from 2016. At that time, there were 2 white police officers in Louisiana who shot and killed Alton Sterling, a Black man. A pastor responded to that by writing a spoken word poem, and she recorded herself performing it and posted it online. By the next morning, millions of people had seen that spoken word poem, and it had garnered over 200,000 responses, largely positive, by the next morning. Now, at Poets Against Racism and Hate USA events, we do not reach millions of people yet, but we know that the poetry at those events has an effect by the audience response. We see people be brought to tears by the poetry. We hear them say that they've been moved to take action because of the poetry. We can see that poetry is a means of protest, and we know that poetry is power. Of course, being inspired by poems is just the beginning. Patricia and I hope that you'll take any inspiration you have tonight and turn it into actual acts that you can do in the fight for social justice. As Patricia mentioned, to that end, we've put together a list of resources that you can use to do just that. And I would challenge you in the coming days, take a look, access that list online, read it over, find any of the organizations and so forth that are interesting to you, and go there and do further exploration and see where that leads. You can make a difference. We can all make a difference. The link for that resource is going to be in the description of this event on our YouTube channel, and it is also on the events page of the Poets Against Racism and Hate USA website. So please do take a look at that. Okay, let's get on with the main event. As Patricia said, we have 5 tremendous poets ready to read tonight. I've heard their stories and I've read their poems. And I know that when you experience their poetry, you'll understand why we say poetry is power. So, Patricia, give me a second to bring you back on, and I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for that very sobering assessment of what's happened since George Floyd was murdered, and for putting what we're about to hear into context so beautifully. Thank you for that. All right. Well, I'm thrilled to introduce our first poet, Dawn Shields. Dawn is a freelance writer who believes that the written word is a powerful tool in implementing social change. Her focus is educating the public about Black history in the United States, which is all our history, and how it perpetuates injustice today. She passionately reveals the disguised suppression and control that is mass incarceration. At the same time, she celebrates the strength, the intelligence, beauty, and contribution of these great people. Dawn is the mother of 6 and grandmother of 9, and her youngest 2 children were adopted from Haiti. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm happy to be part of it this year. I'm going to start with a poem. It's called Never Mind. When slavery ended near the conclusion of the Civil War, owners of plantations, railroads, and mines in the South still needed cheap labor. This led to slavery by another name. Black codes were passed to limit the freedom of Blacks and ensure the availability of cheap labor. Blacks were arrested for any conceived infraction, such as loitering, breaking curfew, vagrancy, not carrying proof of employment. They were fined and forced into unpaid labor. While slaves were investments that would be beaten to near death, prisoners were only leased. If one died, they would just lease another, which led to even more heinous abuses. Never mind. Strong Black body, silent, Black, sigh, lent your body, rent your body, homeland, home, lands far away. Body on body, Black on Black, belly of boat. Strong Black body, Black is beast, be still, Be stripped, be steady, be starved, be. Chains to claims, great price demands, highest bidder, bid her goodbye. Field hand, bleeding hand, white hand, babe in hand, new brand. Shh, empty hand. Emancipation, anticipation, no realization. Paper signed, war ended and dead. Slavery ceases. Sea says ships no longer needed. Slave to prisoner, fields to mines, minus mine. No investment, get replacement. Beat to death, never mind. Worked to death, never mind. Never mine. My body, my mind, my wife, my daughter, my land, my home, never mine. The Negro, the South, these are details. The real story is the universal one of men who destroy the souls and bodies of other men and in the process destroy themselves for reasons neither really understands. It is the story of the persecuted, the defrauded, the feared and detested. I could have been a Jew in Germany, a Mexican in any number of states, or a member of any inferior group. Only the details would have differed. The story would be the same. And this is a quote by John Howard Griffin, who wrote a book called Black Like Me. And that's the title of my next poem, Black Like Me. Place the white man in the ghetto, call it home. Deprive him of education, nothing to own. Divide and decide where he can reside. He would, after a time, assume the same characteristics that you attach to the black. Distill his life to a struggle just to fulfill basic instincts for self-respect. Give him little physical privacy with no agency to change his condition, regardless of his conviction. He is merely a people without power who live on a planet without possibilities. These characteristics don't spring from whiteness or blackness, not from his condition, but from his conditioning. The depths of his despair come from disparity and atrocity, from peril and pain that he lives with every day. You will see it is his legacy. Let us say today that I see this not as a white man, not as a black man, but as a human with the same family cult that cultivates the same ideals. Let us not just try, but triumph, so not just a few will have a future, but all people will stand and withstand, will resist and persist. It may be hard, it will be huge, but let us choose to respect and protect, because night is coming to our world, and it will be black like me. 18 years ago, I adopted my son from Haiti. He is the youngest of my 6 children. When he was growing up, he loved to play in the woods with sticks, just like my other biological children. He rode his bike around our rural Pennsylvania neighborhood. He ran cross country and track and played baseball and basketball just like all the other white boys. When he became a man, I realized that his world was going to be different. It is that discovery that led to many of my poems. This poem is dedicated to my son Micah and Ahmaud Arbery, another Black boy killed on February 23rd, 2020, while running in his neighborhood in Brunswick, Georgia. Lessons from a Black Son. I was told this was not a problem, not my problem. I was told this is history, but in fact it is his story. His story became mine, my Black son taught me. Mine when mama became, my name became. Same name, white sun said, bred with different meaning, careening fear, my Black son taught me. Baby, toddler man, with sinewed legs so fast he ran. Don't leave the track, might not come back. Maud, my name screams God, my Black son taught me. Wrinkled bumper flecks of rust collide with probing eyes. Uniform draws near, draws gun. Hands up, hoodie down. Do not run. Turn around, turn around, turn around. Sir, may I tell you something, sir? Shoot, cracks his reply. Blue lights flashing, red blood splashing. My Black son taught me. Upending, uprooting, upchucking. Complicit ignorance, ignited inference, determined no deference. Mass importation, incarceration, devastation. My Black son taught me. They lie like leopards, they stalk, they smother. He wheezed under their knees until he no longer breathed. No matter how I pray, my son is the prey. I will always remember what my Black son taught me. And this last poem is about Micah as well. Most orphans adopted from Haiti are not true orphans. Because of extreme poverty, parents often cannot afford to take care of their children. Anyone that knows me knows that my adopted son is the love of my life, meant to be mine. But if truth be told, he was first meant to be with his birth mother. And so this poem is a tribute to her. Meant to be mine. Babe on table, labeled, orphaned, poverty stricken, poverty stolen, poverty orphaned. Waiting, anticipating, brown eyes peering, beckon, not reckon, only one, so much done. Mother, done. Siblings, done. Home, done. Had it begun? Babies listed, names ascribed and assigned. Across the room he's carried. Gaze lengthens, then strengthens. Frantic search, find his name. What a shame. No other claim. He was meant to be mine. Meaningful mourn, we meld, we weld, commencing, connecting, departing, discarding, waiting, a long time waiting. Paperwork devours days as he stares, eyes glazed, stainless bowl of rice and beans and rice and beans and rice and beans, belly bulging, still starving. He was meant to be mine. Finally released from government's clutches, name change, house change, mom change. strange words, skin, hair, air, new belonging, old departing, haunting, haunting, someone missing, but he was meant to be mine. Prayed for, saved, trauma, unspoken, unnoticed, undeserved, trauma, gratitude, loss, gratitude, separation, gratitude. Why gratitude? But he was meant to be mine. Birth mother, first mother, surrender mother, homeless, hopeless, fearless, childless, arms ache, breast ache, heart ache. You were meant to be mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. It may be hard, it will be huge, but let us choose. I'm going to take those words away with me tonight, along with that powerful reading. Thank you. Our next poet is Ruchi Chopra, and I'm pleased to introduce her, a former journalist, an artisan jewelry designer, a part-time teacher, and a published author. Her writings draw on her experience as a South Asian with ancestry rooted in India's pre-partition era. She grew up in India and now lives in Ohio with her family. As you'll hear, Ruchi is passionate about poetry and storytelling as a medium for creating awareness of socio-cultural, human rights, gender, and environmental issues. Her work explores longing and hope, resistance, the diaspora, and exile themes, and draws inspiration from the migrants' roots. Her poetry is a lived experience from oral storytelling, lineages, photographs, memories, traditions, and community and family, longing through the lens of a South Asian woman of color. Welcome, Ruchi.
Thanks, Patricia. I will start with an introductory note explaining the backstory behind each piece I render today. I'm going to read my two poems, The Cocked Gun, Guard, The Baby's Cradle, and Vineyard, for in this Together 2024 to honor the memory of George Floyd and other voices that underwent systematic racism, social injustice, police brutality, hatred, crime, and celebrate the compassionate stories of communities coming together to address these issues, action, and solidarity. The cocked gun, Gal, the baby's cradle, was a result of madness, hate crime, and everything that was going on in the world, primarily in the USA, with the Asian during pandemic. Reading, seeing, and hearing such news daily and non-stop worldwide was too chaotic and suffocating. The cocked gun guard the baby's cradle. The cocked gun guards the baby's cradle. The last snow of the April banishes the marsh green field. Barbed fences on either side of the rows of houses with unkempt lawn, with their tenant, a sleuth, a grin harvested in a marigold way, moved towards the west. Its hips swaying like a serpent, dancing on parallels of tune of a snake charmer. Next full moon night, the snow the pail of moonbeam harvested from the gallows, tongue blue with venom, coal, steel, gunpowder on my tongue I taste. Advances on my sheer curtain to nudge me softly, but not to wake me up, for it would be impolite. Alone in the darkness of the dawn, like an empty conceit, shell, cartridge, I sleep, baby snoring, the pail of trinkets over the cradle, half moon clutched in my cold palm, the cocked gun guards the baby's cradle. Soon the rays, the moonbeam will fade off, diminish and vanish into the dawn. Snow will melt, devour the silent, the cocked gun. The barbed fences will rattle, making a sound of a baby rattle, trapped inside a shadow, a silhouette of a dream, from unkempt lawn to peace. Then it would just turn and turn out, guarded by a cocked gun. The veneer results from my experiences as a person of color, immigrant, and human in a non-chromatic world. The non-top invalidation, microaggression, and day-to-day experiences, stories, news on issues such as social injustice, inequality, racism, and hatred were instrumental in shaping this particular piece, where every wine is a standalone experience. In wine number 3, you will hear a few words that might be new to you, such as Harlem, Manhattan, Connaught Place, and Himalaya. Harlem is a neighborhood in Upper Manhattan, New York City. Manhattan is a town in New York City. Connaught Place is one of the main financial, commercial, and business hubs in New Delhi, India. Himalayas is a mountain range in Asia, and they are the highest mountain range in the world. Wine number 1. Shadows congregate in a city with brazen graffiti swarming onto the sidewalks of a busy New York street. Unmindful of the lanternflies swarming the city like hitchhikers, they congregate around the mold, sawdust, and moist debris within the walls of a newly constructed housing site meant for the prospective home for the freshly arrived trunk luggage. Wine number 2. They all left hurriedly to their cocoon and hive after watching the 10-minute assault on humanity. No one wanted to stay past their curfew time with brazen graffiti. Wine number 3. Char-boiled pavement, the city's odor, and noise. Hate with a pungent sting puffed up on the street from Harlem to Manhattan to Connaught Place to the Himalayas to fenced playground, thistles and nettle leaves harvested from our backyard. Bitter, broiled, with linseed oil. Thousands of thistles and nettle leaf wedge on a shadow without respite in a city with brazen graffiti. Now, moving on to my concluding note, we still have a long way to go to create a more kind and equal world. Poetry, literature, art, and architecture remind us where to go to find the dream of one world and a better tomorrow. We as a human being must keep working on it, sculpting and reimagining the scenarios and the voices lost in the translation of the bigger picture, or the voices that fought hardest for their survival, like George Floyd, and many other stories that remain uncaged in lost and found of the museum, or immigrant suitcases to be accepted, to be celebrated and cherished for their sacrifices and courage to stand against such social injustices, hatred, inequality, and kept thriving and encouraging and sculpting the voices for the dream of better tomorrow. I want to thank the past team and its members for their unrelenting effort to keep the momentum going, to keep up the talk, to change the narrative, and to celebrate kindness via writing poetry. Now say it louder with me. I am not defined by skin color, texture, tag, nuances, accent, or subset. I am not defined by skin color, texture, tag, nuances, accent, or subset. My courage, honesty, compassion, dreams, and voice define me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi. I loved this one phrase in particular in your poem. Tongues blue with venom, cold steel gunpowder on my tongue I taste. That's very powerful. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Scott Royster. I hope I'm saying that right, Scott. Please correct me if I'm not. Scott has been writing poems on social justice themes, including descriptive poems illustrating issues of race and class in Central Ohio for many years. Some of them appear in his 2017 book, Waiting for the Light to Change, put out by Prolific Press. And more will appear in his next book, Above the Fold, in 2025. Born in Columbus and raised in the Underground Railroad town of Westerville, Gary writes publicity for an affordable housing nonprofit and helps teach ESOL and citizenship classes in the immigrant communities of Boston. You can find out more about Scott on his website if you search his name on the internet. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Patricia. Hope you can hear me. I'm in an Airbnb and I'm trying to be kind of quiet, but I'll make sure you hear me. The first poem is one of many poems I've written about traveling in the South of the United States. And it's set in Memphis, Tennessee. It's titled Memphis Vintage. I will be reading only two poems. They're both exactly 7.5 minutes long, maybe. Memphis Vintage. Heading back to town after gawking at bales of cotton stacked on skids on warehouse docks, I followed a street in the industrial district parallel to the railroad tracks, where antebellum runaway slaves and dust bowl hobos strummed broken guitars and sang the country blues by boxcars at bonfires on the bluff above the Mississippi River. until I found on a downtown side street a junk shop full of fossils from that city's southern crossroads culture. In a black plastic milk crate, I leafed through out-of-print guides on getting right with Jesus, planning the perfect wedding, understanding atheism, combating communism, and making your own moonshine. All worth collecting for bathroom reading at the house back home in Boston. I glossed a yarn-bound portfolio of paint-by-number genre pieces that someone had salvaged from a dusty attic, featuring a tow-headed toddler teasing an orange kitten, a pre-Raphaelite redhead in a diaphanous gown under a rainbow waterfall, and some tendrils of blue phlox crawling over the ledge of a moss-softened stone wall. In a cardboard box of recordings, I scanned the liner notes of a Village Voice critic on the tattered jacket of a 78 RPM album by W.C. Handy, the father of the blues, and chuckled at the incredibly kitschy cover of Elvis Presley's Blue Hawaii. The ukulele, yellow flowered lei, sunglasses, and red floral shirt, and learn more from 5 minutes with these artifacts about American music than I might have known before. I flipped through dated editions of Field and Stream, Playboy, and Popular Mechanics, and I glanced at cardstock postcards of the Mardi Gras Festival and the St. Louis World's Fair, like those of Niagara Falls and the Empire State Building that my mom brought home to Columbus from a car trip east with 3 other women after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki 3 days later ended the World War. By a dusty bin at the back of the store, I winced at a framed caricature of a little black girl once known as a pickaninny with bulging eyes and exaggerated lips as red as her red bandana, looking from the doorway of her log cabin to the vanishing point on the Cotton Row horizon, while a field hand in overalls with gunmetal skin, huge hands, and high hips doffed his straw hat and bowed to the white folks in silk gowns and linen suits, drinking mint juleps on the veranda of the plantation house. In the same dusty bin, there was a black and white photograph from 1965 of Martin Luther King marching with John Lewis and others in movement across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, just before the troopers attacked. And that other photograph, not as famous as the one that won the Pulitzer Prize, but taken an hour later by the same photographer, Moneta Sleet, from a respectful distance across the empty aisle, of Coretta King seated in her mourning veil at the end of the pew, comforting her 2 attentive children in a confidence that continues to be our duty as citizens to protect. The next one is going to be set in Columbus, Ohio area, where I grew up. It's regarding a visit back home from Boston area. And one thing you might need to know, I think you know what American football is, as opposed to European football. But Ohio State was famous, is still famous for having had a coach named Woody Hayes in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, maybe into the 80s. Legendary character in a town that almost worships football. My father's hearing aid won. I didn't think he'd heard me say it, sitting there with his glass of vodka, in his green upholstered chair by the faux mahogany end table near the living room couch, where a week of the Columbus Dispatch and 2 months of People magazine drifted like leaves under the ash tree in the front yard, regarding a colleague who reminded me of him. He's small and tough like you, Dad, as easygoing as they come, and great to talk to, too, when I visited him in the stockroom of the Harvard Educational Review. I thought he'd been giving his undivided attention to the Buckeyes pregame football show, to the new coach at Ohio State, who, like Woody Hayes before him, was assuring the television audience of true believers that these fine young men to his left and right, one black and one white, were doing fine in their courses. Yep, doing all right, and that they were maintaining wholesome community standards still in place back then. Since surgeries failed to mend what a birth defect and the din of a factory shed had broken at the lathe, where my father bent metal sheets for the fenders, hoods, and bumpers of coal mining machines ravaging Appalachia, I wasn't surprised that he hadn't heard me say, even though I'd practically shouted it to him, as all of us had to do in conversation all along for him, that a friendly older black man at my workplace, a jazz aficionado who'd moved north to Boston from Birmingham in the 50s during the Great Migration to work on the production line for the Polaroid Corporation, put me as much in mind of him as the white guys he'd worked with for 30-some years down at the shop. Guys like Ed Thatcher, Ray Thomas, Red Berry, Bud McKenzie. 2. The Buckeyes' new coach, asking the same sort of questions of the sleek young running back majoring in business and the beefy defensive end hoping to be a high school coach and an evangelical preacher at his neighborhood church, that Woody had asked of their predecessors in the 1960s, James, is it true that your father played ball in the 1940s for the Michigan Blue? And Troy, was your mom really the corn queen of Coshocton County in 1952? Was getting the same replies as Woody used to get from the likes of Rex Kern, Archie Griffin, Mike Tomzak, and Jack Tatum. That's right, Mr. Hayes. He really did. Yes, sir, Mr. Hayes. As a matter of fact, she was. My father, who could carry a tune with Sinatra when he sang along in his better moods, hadn't bothered to look and lean my way as he did when I had something less significant to say. And he hadn't clicked the volume down. In lieu of using his hearing aid, he had just kept cupping his calloused right hand to his damaged right ear to hear what the players of the week always said better through demonstrated action on the football field, that we should just play together to get the race thing right. 3. In clear view of the department store reproduction of a woodland setting and of drapes that were drawn against the autumn day, there was nothing I could do but keep watching the interview from my mother's swivel chair near the shut front door by the cherry veneer bookcase crammed with the historical fiction of James Michener novels and the World Book Encyclopedia edition of 1964. I wasn't going to add, even if my father had been listening, that this friend at work holding down a part-time job to keep from turning to drink like my father recently had a sweet, familiar mixture of machismo and tenderness, a small man's proud heart and a blue-collar understanding that it's usually a matter more of class than of race. 4. The coach and his players were discussing the challenges they'd faced that afternoon in the Notre Dame game. when my father said, with a characteristic grimace of pain on his pleasant but nervous face, without entirely taking his eyes off the screen, "Sonny, I don't give a damn what they say about the blacks, and I can't hear a goddamn thing." But did you hear that? Did you see that tailback run in that clip from last week's game? I'm sure your buddy at work would agree. Man, they can really play football. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Scott. That image of Coretta King sitting in her mourning veil at the end of the pew, comforting her two attentive children, in a confidence that continues to be our duty as citizens to protect. It's a great ending to that poem. Our next poet is Susan Truxell Souter. Her poems have appeared in many anthologies and in Appalachia Review. Part of her poem from the collection Fracture, Essays, Poems, and Stories on Fracking in America, was published as a song. She also has read her work in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and the Allegheny Front twice featured her poetry, and once her work as an organic farmer. The 4-part poem Susan will read tonight was included as an art entry with 23 other mostly graphic art pieces exhibited throughout West Virginia as part of the Listening for Racial Understanding project organized by Morgantown's First Presbyterian Church. Susan is retired from a diverse journalism career, holds a BA in communications from Ohio State University, and lives in West Virginia. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. You might hear a storm raging tonight, which seems particularly appropriate considering the commemoration of George Floyd's murder. I wanted to follow up a few things about this particular piece. When I wrote it, I understood the project as a creation of art depicting a conversation that would include my reaction, and that was not what I was to do. After clarification, I understood my work was to be largely a creative focus on the conversation. I found moments of discomfort in my effort to poetically render the conversational excerpts. And because of my whiteness, I worried I might insert my own unintentional assumptions into the piece. But I asked for input from people of many colors to help me root out any bias. I hope there isn't any. I also wanted to caution that the listener that poetry is not journalism, and there's many subtleties and nuances of conversation that are missing. There's a number of voices here. There is the narrator, the questioner, the woman known as TL, and the fourth voice is the man known as B. I rendered their answers to two of the prompted questions, trying to be true to the spirit of their spoken words. So here is my one long poem, 4 parts, and I keep seeing a reflection in my glasses. I hope you don't. The long title is 2 of 46 strangers talk about their racial experiences through prompted questions. They sit apart, yet together. He has always gone by B. She'll go by TL. They fully face the now of careful, quiet talk across the glacial crevasse of Black in white America, or white in a separatist land. B, his ample brown face under ball cap, sports graying sideburns. He keeps his eyes on the shared computer screen. A silver cross dangles from a chain. His black t-shirt, its backdrop. TL's years run across her creased white cheeks, her hair turned light. Her loose brown-white side braid sprays short hairs over her shoulder. She leans toward her laptop in red and black checkered shirt. They could have been classmates, both high school graduates of 1978. A question. Can you talk about a time when you were afraid? TL says, that's hard. There's not a lot that scares me, but I remember one time, 1968. As a child brought on beach vacation, TL's shallow water play turns with an ocean wave, her float and small body flip. Float become weight, pins her face down, arms flail, eyes close, cheeks and nose press into coarse sand, shifting underneath. Sounds muffle. Brighten, lighten, father's arms grab up her little girl round, heartbeat safe, free to grow again. B says, my scariest moment's gonna make your all's hair raise. Happened just outside our town, Masontown, Pennsylvania, which is not too far from New Geneva, Pennsylvania. That's Klan country. 1977. Summertime, young time, car cruise, cousins and niece ride in the back seat, warm air billows through open windows. B at 17 years takes in the view. Brother-in-law behind the wheel knows the way, speeds down scenic side roads. Like rotten fruit, the ripe green hillside scene splits open to reveal swarms of white hoods gathered in the distance. Time becomes humid, sweats. Brother-in-law brakes, wheels the car around for a second pass by, sticky seconds, a tick too long. Pistol appears above B's ear, a shotgun aimed over the car hood. Klan guards hidden until now. B stops breathing. White man talks into walkie-talkie talk. Cold metal presses a lifetime against B's head, and he's sure he's gone. Brother-in-law talks, tries, we're gonna tell the state trooper parked in a cruiser not far from here. Boy, you are dumb. Come the uncocked words. He's one of us. You are so stupid. Silence. Guns withdraw. Threads unknot. Pull through the heavens. Slowly, the car creeps forward. Bodies freed. TL cries, shakes her head, says, I'm so sorry. B says, I'm just blessed to be sitting here to be able to tell this story. TL says, I can't stop crying. That's got to live with you a long, long time. B says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring y'all down. Full man body breaths move the memory to rest for now. Another question. Can you describe something you think other races don't know about your life? TL explains. I was part of the busing and school integration in Williamsburg, Virginia for my middle and high school years. My mom and dad talked about it and felt it was the best thing that could have happened. And I did too. I was in 5th grade. 1974. Lettered yellow bus scrapes to a stop like a rolling heap of metal lunchboxes. Folding doors open with a long exhalation. TL hops up the black matted steps, aims down the aisle, tucks into an open seat. The bus pulls away from her street, and she gazes out the half-hazy windows onto the school she won't attend. Metal upon metal creaks, air brakes release, another child on. Next stop, repeat. And the bench seats fill with skin tones sandwiched together. As the bus heads into one neighborhood, brown chocolate children file on. In another, pink peach. Adults would describe them as black or white, though many shades of flesh are present. While the bus travels its route, TL watches them mix together. By the end of her hour-long ride, a new taste is on her tongue. B asks for the question to be restated, to which the questioner repeats. Can you describe something you think other races don't know about your life? B says, boy, there's a lot of that. 1,000 slights over a decades-long career. His supervisor's always eager to share the same story. Hey, B, we had a meeting and a black man was there. A black man, he was dressed so well, an African-American man, and B, dressed so well, and he spoke very well, and B, a man of color was there, and he spoke very well, dressed so well. Well. At an out-of-office meeting, B carries a duffel, laptop, and projector. What's he doing here? Guess someone's got to carry the bags. Squelched snickers. To surprised eyes, B is introduced, gives his slideshow. At session's end, B says, we do know a little bit and do more than carry bags. Thank you again for everyone who made my reading possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That storytelling was amazing. That interaction between B and his brother-in-law and the White Hoods was just, I couldn't breathe while I heard you tell the story, especially he's one of us. Thank you. Our last poet this evening is Gary Huskinson. Gary is a storyteller, poet, activist, published author, and pick and mix event organizer from Peterborough in the United Kingdom. Gary likes specializing in jazz poetry, which fuses his love for jazz and poetry, as well as organizing pick and mix events. He and his sons created Say It Louder, an art, sorry, my paper is sticking here, an art and activism project with the purpose of initiating everlasting change in relation to systemic racism. The premise for Gary's writing and performance is to evoke emotion with a joyful irony, and he wants his work to be shared by everyone. Gary views stories and poetry as everlasting gifts for the heart and soul, and we are certainly grateful that he's here to share them with us tonight. Gary.
Hello. Hello. I, Gary, have a knee in my neck. May 25th, 2020, outside cooked food store at the intersection of East Street and Chicago Avenue. I, George, stand at the night at 2000 hours. This is the time the master sleeps. This is the best time to run. Run, run. That's what Harriet said when they were left for dead. With a knee in our neck, I.G. Floyd must run. Run. The black race is on. Don't look back. Don't look back. Just run. Before daybreak, before the goon squads have their breakfast. As Nina said, Mississippi, goddamn. I, Solomon Northup, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 years a slave. Also have a knee in my neck. I've got to get at least 35 miles away before the quaking bait. 8 minutes, 46 seconds. After that, I, Freddie Gray, stops breathing. And I, Freddie Gray, keeps swinging. And just water left out on a plate. I, Solomon Gray, keep swinging. Master's gonna be running the Proud Boy slave. Churches drinking blood red wine out of chalices, saturating his brain with juices, resting his arm from giving lashes while he's going. I, Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Bang, bang, you're dead. I'm not. Even when I'm sleeping, I've got to keep him running. Whether or not I keep on breathing is whether or not Derek Chauvin still keeps on kneeling. I, Solomon, keeps on running. Master's head will be grumbling and growling very loud, counting the stones and the good name he's losing. I, Rodney King, legs are aching, lungs are fit for bursting. Oh, and if all the LAPD masters to stop me from breathing, I, Eric Garner, becomes ahead of reaching the river like Peter. I, George, saw the wind and felt the waves roar. I, 4 little girls in Birmingham in 1964. Faith is poor, not just in the Almighty, but also in the LAPD for 400 years. Yet I still shout out to the Lord. I have to believe he's a Negro father. Feel feet bleeding from master's thorns and cactuses stabbing, heartbeat accelerating, St. Louis writing, let me breathe, let me have a belief. Because I, George Floyd, fall on the rugged floor where I look at Iceland in soaked by mongrels with LAPD badges, saliva yelping, yapping, telling the drunken master they've got I.G. Floyd. The dog who owned the dogs was laughing, triumphantly slapping their face, cracking their whips, sadly beating I.G. Floyd. Want to be taken back to the plantation, away from this intersection, while the slaves are camping where I, just another, hung out in the hot sun as exhibit number 1. Land laid out cold on a slab with a knee stood in my neck at the crematorium, warning others to be obedient. More cow skins whipping when the workday finished. More rookies pistol whipping until I, Floyd, is a waif of a flower where there's no white doves. A hush can't run a POW, a prisoner of war. It is my duty to continually seek freedom for I, Solomon. Every day is a milestone on the USA plantation. United Slaves of America. Each day I have to say my prayers and run faster. Every day I go on the beat and the bang. I open my Bible. Blessed in the truth, who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, not stands in the path of sinners, nor sight in the seat of the sinful. But it is the delight in the law of the God, and it is the Lord that meditates. It's the law that meditates at night. Because I.G. Floyd run, I, Solomon, is dead. I.G. Floyd was stillborn. MIA, missing in action. Black bloc stolen. Replaced with a colonizer's accent. They've fallen thyself. Never to see again. Live and take comfort. Thou pass behind powers that will work for thee, the air and the earth and the skies. This is not earth, wind and fire. I was born a slave. I breathe the air a slave. I will die as a slave. I am a slave. Hands no longer cuffed. Keys put away for a rainy day. My legs no longer shackled. They're fixed together. I.G. Floyd. I.G. Floyd can only hold this breath. Not that breath. This breath. This one for 8.46 seconds of growling, howling. A lone wolf howls like the last police siren. The howling, the dogs serenely curtsy to their icons. The majestic peers, the right honourable noble walls, a tango with the walls, a rise and a fall, a rise and a fall. I mean, a tango party with bouching gachos and wolves. To get this party started white. A tango. A walk. A count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The blood red lipstick barking bitches adheres to the wolves. Alert. Wolves release the leashes. Those southern wolves howl and snarl at the strange fruit about to be swinging. Don't be fooled by those northern foxes. Smiling, they are dangerous and cunning. Their skin is orange with red lipsticks. My master is called Franklin, and I ain't got no Benjamins. They shot Lincoln. Yes, they shot Lincoln in the box. They call it the Great Migration. I call it breathing. The massa releases the lashes, while the rage of civilization, while the wolves with their ivory tugs threatening with their badges. G. Floyd, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, our King, our Ghana, and you. Yes, you. On your marks. Get set and go on the speed of the bang. Power, stride, power, drive, power, drive, power. Run! 10 meters, 20 meters. I've got to stay streamlined. I've got to run. Power, drive, stride, streamline. Movement horizontal. Focus on a straight line. Woof, woof, woof. Run. Those black crows migrate south forever, leaving, I told you, leaving the strange fruit in the north to linger, not plucked and abused and undernourished, but left to swing through the blues, to all to see, left to right, right to left. Run! No more than 8.4 seconds. Can you hear? Run, assailant, run! 30, 40, 50, my body rises towards a high moon sun. Run! 60 meters.
Hi, I'm hoping we can get Gary back. I'm going to give him a few minutes. Let me take him off. And Patricia, I'm going to bring you on to talk a little bit, and I'll try to have a private chat with Gary to get him back on. Just 1 second.
Hi, thanks, Debbie. I wasn't sure if I froze or if he froze. What I found interesting is this term strange fruit was used by more than one poet tonight. Obviously, an image that relates to lynching, trees growing strange fruit, and that wonderful, although horrible, theme song that was made so famous by several jazz singers. I was just thinking about that when we lost his feed. So let me know, Debbie, if we should just go on and close.
Yeah, he's gone. I think he had some technical difficulties. So I think I'm going to top off and have you go ahead and close us out.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry, but I think he was very close to the end, and that tremendous energy and an incredibly dramatic approach to reading his poetry, really impressive. So I'd like to thank Gary and, of course, all the poets for sharing their work tonight and making this event so thought-provoking and so meaningful. We promised that before we'd conclude, we'd talk about allyship. It's such an important concept. I quoted this same comment last year, but it's so perfect that I'm going to use it again. It was written by the writer Roxane Gay, who defines allyship like this: we need people to stand up and take on the problems born of oppression as if their own, without remove or distance. We need people to do this even if they cannot fully understand what it's like to be oppressed for their race or their ethnicity, their gender, their sexuality, their ability, class, religion, or any other marker of identity. We need people to use common sense to figure out how to participate in social justice. That's just so well written and gets to the heart of allyship. So as we mentioned earlier, we've created a list of resources regarding allyship and the fight against racism. The link is going to be in the description of this event here on our YouTube channel and also on the events page of our website. This list is, of course, by no means exhaustive. There are numerous credible sources on the internet that you can find and read. You need only seek them out. We hope you do, because after all, we are in this together. We'd also like to invite you to join Poets Against Racism and Hate USA, either as a poet or as a supporter. You don't have to be a poet to be a member. We need your support. We need the support of allies and of readers as much as we do our poets. You can also become involved if you are in Europe. You can become involved in PAR in the UK, and you'll see our URL and a description of this event on our YouTube channel. And we have links to Poets Against Racism in the UK on our website. And so thank you for joining us or watching this video. And on behalf of all our poets and the members and sponsors of Poets Against Racism USA, I'd like to wish you all a very good night. Thank you.